Good afternoon. Thank you for that response. My name is Shelly Rambo. I teach theology just a stone's throw away at Boston University School of Theology. We're just delighted to continue our partnership with, I used to say Liz and Colleen, but the team has grown. I want to say a couple thank yous and then give some short introductions. This event is made possible through a grant that we've been working on for the past 4 years called Trauma Responsive Congregations, and it's been supported by Lilly Endowment, and they're supporting this event, so we thank them. I want to thank also our team who's worked really hard, Dana Olsen-Getty, Shelby Hall, Madison Chow, and in particular for organizing and making this event happen. And for Karen and folks at Howard Thurman Center who are hosting us, it's really hard to get an event at the Howard Thurman Center. But once they heard who was the featured speaker, it was not very hard. But this is a special space, and it's a special space. I was telling Reverend Walker that Howard Thurman had a deep heart and vision for connecting the neighborhood of Roxbury with Boston University Boston University as a whole. That never quite happened while Thurman was here. So when he left in 1963, he was pretty disappointed about several things. But one of the things that was his deep disappointment is he never got to really cross communities. And in fact, that community, the community which hosts the program in the center, is only about 4 miles away. So Thurman, it felt like a chasm between those two communities, and the Howard Thurman Center really stands for being a bridge between the university and the city. So this is a perfect place to host the event. The Cory Johnson Program for Post-Traumatic Healing was founded in September 2014 to address the collateral damage of the epidemic of violence in urban communities. It's named in memory of a young church member, Cory Johnson, who was killed in a shooting in 2010 in Roxbury, a neighborhood, as I said, that's only about 4 miles away from here. In our Trauma Responsive Congregations program, we worked with congregations responding to various forms of trauma. We were privileged to feature 2 programs, which we think are model programs, that are kind of housed in and supported by congregations, and Can We Talk is one of 2. There's not a lot of those kind of trauma healing programs, and you'll hear, and of course you can read about the features of that program. It sounds simple, sharing a meal, providing a container for a community to talk about difficult things, empowering people to tell their stories, and empowering those gathered to witness those stories. It sounds simple, but it's not. And healing from trauma is really collective work, and the power of this title is that you can't do it alone. You're not alone. No one left alone is what the book is titled and what it really insists upon. Can We Talk is the community-based healing program that comes out of, is at the core centerpiece of the Cory Johnson program. And this book, written by Reverend Liz Walker, is the story of how this all started, particularly how the program at the center of KJP, do you call it KJP? Never? Cory Johnson program? For post-traumatic healing developed into Can We Talk. It's also a story of Reverend Liz Walker, who followed a calling and who in this book wrestles with her own identity as the visibility of racial injustice came to the fore for some, visible to many, but invisible before to some. It's a story of the Johnson family, a neighborhood in Boston, and the realities of Black people living in the United States. You, I think, Liz, capture the larger picture by featuring key actors in that story, those impacted, including yourself. We're honored to have Cory Johnson's mother, Debra Johnson, with us today. She's the heartbeat of this program, a mother who turned unimaginable loss into a mission to serve others. So thank you for being here. We're also honored to have Colleen Sharka with us, the co-founder of Can We Talk. Colleen is a licensed mental health counselor and has been, in every sense, the backbone of Can We Talk. I don't know Liz Walker without Colleen Sharka. They're a team sharing strengths to make this clinical pastoral partnership what it is today. So you're going to hear from Debra and Colleen, but I just want to say briefly, there's a long bio of Reverend Liz Walker, and I'm not going to, you just read the book, buy the book. That's a promo. Reverend Liz Walker is an ordained minister in the AME Church, long-standing pastor, maybe over 13 years at at Roxbury Presbyterian. Now a Presbyterian. There's a lot of Presbyterians in the house today, so. A 2005 graduate of Harvard Divinity School. Many know Reverend Walker as the first African-American weeknight news anchor in Boston. When you turned on the TV, you would see Liz at a time where that was pretty historic, right, in the 1980s. Also, a journalist and a news anchor. Called attention to issues in Sudan. That was a big part of your life and commitment. And co-founder of Can We Talk. That's all I'm going to say because you need to buy the book. So welcome. We're really thrilled to have some time for Debra and Colleen to start us off. So welcome.
Good afternoon. I am a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a grandmother, and most importantly, I am a mother of two great young women, Danielle and Mika. I also have a bonus son named Justin. My name is Debra, and I am a survivor. Not the title I would have chosen for myself. On May 30th, 2010, my only son, Cory, was murdered. I tell you, heartache is a real thing. If I did not believe in God and knew I would see him again, I do not believe I would have survived. He was 27 years old. He left two beautiful girls, Ayomi and Anai are their names. They are now 21 and 19. He was not perfect, but he was good. He was handsome, he was smart, he was loyal. He made his sisters and I feel safe. A beginning story is the night it happened, I got a phone call. I had just come home and was getting ready for bed. I got a phone call. And the person on the other end said, Debra, you need to go to Brigham and Women because Cory's been shot. So I get dressed. I think that I was just in a fog after I heard that. So I got dressed, and as I'm driving to the hospital, I go by the scene. Now, I don't know if she told me that that's where it happened or not, but that's where I was driving. I got out. I tried to, describe Cory, what he looked like, blah, blah, blah. And they said, the detective said, lady, go over there and park your car, and Officer Mike will take you to the hospital. I think that's when the numbness started. When this program started in 2014, I was stuck. I did not have a feeling about anything. I was just numb, no joy, no love, just blank. It was 4 years since my son was taken at that time. I did not know where to start on this journey. Thank God that Colleen and Arville came to the church to counsel us so that we knew that we weren't exactly losing our mind. I just did not know where to start. We started this program for our community. There's so much pain and undiagnosed trauma. There's a reluctance to seek help, so it seems hopeless to most people in our community. I could not imagine the effect that this program would have on me. The first night I shared my story was the first time I shared my story in public. I thought I would turn to dust and die. So a few years later, I cannot tell you when the whole shift started. I realized that I was telling certain parts of the story and not having a total meltdown, which is where I realized some healing was happening. I know I could not have gotten to this place without this program, without the trauma education, without Colleen, Reverend Liz exposing me to new things and telling me I was doing good. When, ... You cannot do this alone. You cannot do this alone. No one left alone. I could be here for a very long time if I were to tell you about my family and the support they have given me. I have 3 sisters. It's just like a gang, a good gang, but a gang. You know, when we just went to Cameron Hall, there was, 19? 19 people. Like, who does that? So I always like to leave with a little quote. This is from John O'Donohue. And it says, "Let the silent tears flow. And when your eyes clear, perhaps you will glimpse how your eternal child has become the unseen angel." So now I got to introduce Miss Colleen Sharka. Let me start by saying, I love you. You have been my friend and counselor in good times and bad. Without Colleen and dear Arville, I don't think I would be standing here today. They showed my family and I what grieving would look like when we lost my son. They were there with us. 4 years later, when Colleen came to the Cory Johnson program, it felt right. Colleen can always find, she doesn't like me to say too many good things about her, but I'm going to do it anyway. Colleen can always find the good in everything. I feel that is a gift. She listens. She listens softly and makes you feel that you are being heard. She's a teacher and spiritual advisor. Because of what she has taught us about trauma and how the brain works, we are all better equipped to deal with whatever life throws at us. She's a great travel person to be with. We travel together. Actually, on some of our trips, we call ourselves Ebony and Ivory. And yes, we sing, and we belly laugh. These 10.5 years, she has worked so hard, handling everything we have taken for granted in a lot of ways. She has been the engine. I don't think anyone else could have been chosen to do this work. You put your whole self in this program. You are a gift, Colleen Sharka.
I'm standing in front of you for 2 reasons. One, because when I was a young girl, I think it was literally the 4th grade, I was just aware that I was just drawn to people who were suffering and struggling and in pain. And it was something I knew, paradoxically, was where more life and love was. And back then I remember thinking and learning, it's not what's wrong with people, it's what happened to them. So then in the spring of 2014, when Reverend Liz got a hold of me and invited me back to the church because I had been there earlier with Debra's family, what I learned was that she had been watching the pain on people's faces as she walked by the church, walked back and forth to her car in the community. And it was just so clear in the way she described it to me. She wanted to create something, I think she had it already in mind, that would be able to alleviate some of that and really be an action in the community of the church, Roxbury Presbyterian Church, because this was being done out of the nonprofit of the church called Roxbury Presbyterian Church Social Impact Center. And this is the second time I've said this out loud, that spiritually through this last Easter Triduum, because I'm a Catholic contemplative, I call myself, it was very clear to me that Liz's yes to God was just like Mary's with the angel Gabriel. It was exactly like that. It's how it's been these last 10, 11 years now. So she helped me realize that everything we do there is my calling on this earth. And I think when we get to do that, we know it. So as Shelly said, we started in 2014. I will just add that Liz is the first one that said this is blending the spiritual and the clinical together. And that was the intention, and we have kept that going. And that we're community-based, artistically infused, spiritually inspired, and clinically supported. So who are we that I'm talking about? First, we have to say we're the church. And I can tell you that Roxbury Presbyterian Church is the most loving church I have ever been in. Its former pastor, Reverend Herman Hamilton, formed this social impact center in 2000, and the church has just continued to create, to serve the community in anything it needs. And it was Reverend Liz's vision to call all of us together. She's the main we here. And then it's the team. It takes a team to do this. Many of them are here today. Would you raise your hands? Yeah. Some are representing others, yes. And they are part, they're like all the other sites that we have. We have 20 sites now of Can We Talk. And so all those teams are what engines that make their Can We Talk go. Recently, our last site that we just trained and who will be ready to launch soon is the Pilgrim Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. And while we were there a couple weeks ago, we met with Howard University. Liz had a connection of a friend and her husband who's in the psych department, and they want to bring Can We Talk to the students, so we'll be figuring that out. The thing to know about the we is that Can We Talk is peer-led, trauma survivors themselves. So just a brief thing about Can We Talk. A lot of Shelly's already said, I'll just add. The key things for me are that it's drop-in, no need for referral, and no need to give any information. And everyone's welcome, no matter how they identify. And every Can We Talk, therefore, is unique. You never know who's going to come. Start with a meal. Have artistic expression opens it up. So it could be a song, a dance, or an instrument. We read guidelines, and those guidelines are core to keeping the place safe. And then it's surrounded by community companions. We are all community companions, trained in what we call trauma healing-centered work. And there's always a mental health support person there if needed. And that person may give referrals or advocacy support. The best way to remember Can We Talk is the 3 Ps. It's a safe place, an abiding presence, thanks to the spirit and trauma. Shelly, Rambo, and Liz reading that. Ever since then, abiding. It described who we were. We're remaining with people. And the last P is process, just connecting with where people already are in their healing journey and accompanying them, because the wisdom's already in there for their own healing. And just know that it's not just people who've survived violence. It could be job loss, unemployment, betrayal, death of loved one from illness, accidents, etc. I had always hoped, as I bring this to a close, I'd always hoped that Can We Talk would be a place where people would talk about racism and about the wounds of racism, institutional and systemic violence, and it has become that place. And for me, it's the safest place I've ever heard where people share about it, for people to be really heard and people to be able to say what they want to say and scream during their saying it if they need to. So now it's my honor to introduce Liz. And Shelly gave you all the amazing titles. But the one I'll add to it, because this is a new term that she didn't know I had in my heart for her. Besides being a servant leader, which we've all heard of, she's living this out in action. She's a lifelong learner. I've watched her just absolutely dive in and become a trauma expert. The reading, the research, the way she writes it in the book. I mean, it is absolutely a companion for anyone who wants to learn more about trauma on the ground level in a community. And she and I have become teachers together in the school. We are going to teach our second course at Roxbury Community College this coming fall. And it's called Understanding Collective Trauma, and it's open to the community. It's a workforce development type of program, class, so that people can really get a sense of how to understand it if you're on the front lines of care in a job. But what I want to name her is a ministerial responder. because it's not just, minister doesn't catch it all. She's responding. And she responded to the gospel message through action, and this is her this book, the program, everything she's created is the direct response to that. I can tell you it's still shocking to me how she's not at the entrepreneurial level all the time at all. She'll get down on the ground, she'll carry spaghetti sauce in the back of her car. The first time we did it, it tipped over, but I'm not gonna tell that part of the story. And we had a family, we call them our first family because we've watched them from the beginning of the program to now, and we've seen the healing in the mother and her children. And the oldest son, we just knew, we just had a feeling that if he just went to summer school this last time, maybe he'd stick it enough to graduate. And what we developed in our program was really helping people go to the doctor's office with them, go to IEPs with them, court. So what the heck, we would take him and drop him off at school and pick him up and tag team doing it. So we did it, he stuck it out, and he eventually graduated. Now that wasn't the reason, but it was one of the reasons when he felt like we really wrapped around him. So Liz does this with humility, generosity of spirit, love, and above all, does it because she knows, trusts, and believes in God. Everything is about God for her. She's a woman of deep faith and prayer. I like to think she looks and listens for God's movement now, and then responds with grace, putting it all into action. So I get to introduce my dear friend and partner in work, Liz Walker, who's now an author too. Woo!
Great to be here, because your book, if I may say before you start, when we were forming this organization and forming our ideas about what we were trying to do, Katie Cole you recommended her book. Yeah. You had read her book. You just hadn't met her yet. Oh, okay. That was how it was all connected. I had read your book, and then she connected me with you. So that was a real God moment. But it was your book that just filled in the blanks for us in so many ways, spirit and trauma, especially the story about going to New Orleans and the storm that's always here. So I just wanted to thank you.
Yay. Thank you. I'm very humbled. This is like such a joyous moment for me to witness a program that's so amazing get visibility. And your book, I think, is going to give that kind of visibility for those who have been kind of in the work for a while. So some folks have read the book and others have not. So I thought you could give a little opener about, for those who haven't read the book, set the stage for us and then maybe do a little reading for us.
Absolutely.
Either how you came to write this book or what you want people to know to send them over to the book table to buy the book.
Absolutely. Please buy the book. All the proceeds from the book go to the Social Impact Center and our work. So it's not, that's why I ask you to buy it. So how I came to write the book was because I wanted to honor the Fitzpatrick family first, the Johnsons, because of their courage to break their own silence, especially Debra, and just tell the rest of our community, what they were going through. Because that was a catalyst for other people to kind of become part of who we are. And I wanted to show that. There were lots of reasons. I wanted to honor Cory. As a news reporter, I was a news reporter in Boston for many years, and we would cover stories like shootings just by saying another shooting in Roxbury. We wouldn't do much more than that, including identifying the victim or even following the case. And I felt a lot of shame about that because I was a part of that for many years. And I wanted Cory's story to be out there. And I covered Cory in detail, I think, because I wanted people to know, here's a young man, a human being who has promise and ideas and dreams and all of that. So I wanted to do that. And then the other part was realizing my own need for healing. And as you write, you kind of discover new things about yourself. So I think those were the three reasons. But the program itself, it just grew and grew. We created the program for our neighborhood. We were not thinking of any massive plan. We had no business strategy about growth or anything like that. This would be helpful to the people in this community. And so as it started to grow, Colleen and I and the rest of us in the team saw that, we needed to let people know how it developed and why it's not just a Black problem. It's not just a Roxbury problem. Trauma is a reality. And now, and that was before we are where we are now. Now it's like, oh my God, are we all in traumatic kind of existence, and how you can get through that. So that was the point of it.
Do you want to read this
Sure.
selection?
I didn't pick any. I just opened up the book, so I hadn't planned. This is chapter 7 and just kind of the beginning of Can We Talk? The message on the banner outside our church read, "Are you experiencing trauma or loss? Come, share your voice, share your stories. Let's heal together." Aimed to catch the attention of pedestrians and drivers alike, the big purple and white sign represented the entirety of the Cory Johnson program's initial marketing campaign. Hanging the sign was a frightening, anxiety-filled moment for me. Did the invite make sense? Did it give enough information? We had put so much thought into every word, down to the punctuation at the end of Can We Talk? We wanted that ellipsis to signal that our program wasn't as much about questions as it was about the need to keep talking, to continue, leaving no one out. We definitely overthought that title, though. At least I think we did. But had we covered everything we needed to cover? Would people understand what we were trying to do? Would anybody show up? The sign worked better than any of us could imagine. More than 75 people showed up that first night. I recognized a few of the faces. Several members of Cory's family showed up to support Debra. Justin and Danielle were there, as were a couple of ministers from neighborhood churches. A victim's advocate from Boston Medical Center, and a few other community leaders came as well. But based on what I could see, and other team members confirmed, most of the people who showed up that night lived in the neighborhood. So I'll stop there because I think that was what really blew us away, because this was word of mouth, and who knew that people would want to talk that much? Were they coming for the meal? Were they coming because I used to be on TV? I think they came because they wanted to talk, and so that's what started us, and it was, we were blown away. And people got up and talked that first night, as if they'd been waiting for an opportunity to share their stories.
So this is a book about collective trauma, but I was so struck in reading it a second time how much you mentioned the word grief. It's on 63 of the pages. I did a Google search, which is helpful. I mean, it's 63 pages you use the word grief.
I want to take your class.
I was
really dig in there, boy.
So I have a question around grief. This is, you write in the introduction, collective grief is a political, social, and spiritual dilemma that blocks our nation's capacity to heal. So there's a lot of grief in the book and a lot to grieve, and you invite us to grieve and to work through it. And I want you to just reflect on grieving, why we have a problem doing that, how we could do that together. It really was your invitation. I was like, 63 pages of this book mentions
Well,
grief.
I think that grief and trauma can be inextricably bound. I don't think maybe it doesn't always have to be that way. But Debra, I'm going to keep referring to you, but Debra was grieving as well as the shock. So grief is the loss. But the shock, and maybe it's not that simple, but that's how I'm going to define it. But the shock of the loss, the shock of the way the loss happened, the injustice, unfairness of the loss, that's the trauma part. And so in so many instances, I think they're connected. The grief that I believe that so many of us bear is ongoing personal grief, because we usually don't attend to it. Usually what happens is something, happens in your life, but the kind of prevailing attitude is to move on. You get to grieve for a few weeks, maybe at length, at the longest time. But really, it's a few days. The church, you have the church service, friends bring over the covered dishes, but then it kind of just fizzles from the outside. Maybe people don't know what to say, or maybe they feel you want to move on, or you have to move on. And I think what really happens is you're kind of like Debra said, she was stuck. You're still there. And this is not just violence, this is grief of a natural death. But everybody else expects that you move on. We had one mother who just came to my mind whose son was killed, and he in a horrible tragedy in Roxbury, and her friends just literally, and her family just literally got tired of hearing it. After a certain time, it's like, you know what, we've got to live our lives, and we can no longer deal with this. This is too hard. And I'm sure they did it in a loving way, but she was holding all of this by herself and didn't know what to do. So I think we grieve much more than we admit. And I think it's just something we carry inside of us. This nation is grieving. We're now, everybody's saying we're grieving. We're grieving change. We're grieving things that have been lost. I saw that child be picked up on the street at Tufts University, and that just broke my heart. It's more than anger. It's grief. It's like, what the hell? My heart is broken because of what's happening. So I think that we're coming to grips with the fact that there's much to grieve. I can jump into a sermon at any moment, so I feel myself going. I need to shut up.
So I want to remind people to text questions to that number, because I'm going to ask 2 more and then we're going to open it up. The book discloses your own story, and I think really your own wounds. So tell us about your decision to take that risk to write that.
You mention it or you call it a risk, and I never thought about it. For me, I thought about it as a cleansing. Honestly, never thought that it was a risk to do, though now that I've done it, I think maybe I should have rethought that, but at the time it didn't seem. Colleen always says that public trauma requires or demands public healing. And trauma, just by its very nature, is most times a public situation. It's certainly a relational situation. But many times in our community, it's public because it involves police, or it involves the fire department, or the authorities, or the courts, or what have you. And when I was a little girl, I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, during the time of the Civil Rights Movement. I had lost my mother at birth, and then I lost my father, and I had a great childhood, so I'm not trying to paint a picture that it was all pain. But I did lose my father just the same year that he had decided he wanted me to go to a desegregated school. In 1957, Little Rock desegregated high schools. After that, schools were shut down for a year because there was so much resistance to that. And then they began to slowly desegregate the rest of the grades. And by the time I was in the 7th grade, which was in the mid-60s, my father died that same year after he told me to go to this school, or after they had decided. There was no discussion, just that I was going to this school. And it was a really, really rough time for me because I was a child who had lost my father. And back in the day, there was no trauma, there was no psychological look at things. My father died, we had the funeral, and life goes on. But it didn't go on for me. That was my daddy. That was my heart. And then to go to this school on top of that, and the school was really a very angry place, a contentious place. There were fights all the time. It was just a negative place to be. So I hated it. I hated everything. But I never dealt with that. I went on to high school, went on to college. Rebellious? Yes. Probably looking back more rebellious than just the norm. But at the time, it just seemed like that's what teenagers did. And I went through that, and by the grace of God, my brother and I always say, by the grace of God, we got through it. My brother didn't quite get through it. My brother struggled with alcoholism all of his adult life, just died a few months ago, But the grace in that is that he and I began the conversation about growing up in that time. And did you know this? And did that happen? And did you and Daddy ever talk about this? And we realized that my father never told us anything about our mother, ever. But I was, really young. My brother was a teenager when my father died. So it was just this kind of convoluted mess of good people. This was no child abuse. It was just good people, but people living in silence. And then he died. So maybe he ran out of time. And that was my trauma. And that was a big part of, there was what is it when there's lots of different traumas? Chronic, or when you have compounded, complex trauma. That there were lots of things happening to me that I've just begun to unpack these many years later.
We have a lot of church leaders in this room. And I'm interested in having you reflect on two things. What gets in the way of churches doing the work of trauma healing? And what do you think they uniquely offer to this work? So what kind of gets in the way, and what do they uniquely offer?
I think what gets in the way in the community that I serve, and I don't want to speak for all churches, but maybe this is kind of about all churches. In our community, there's a stigma about mental health that actually the church perpetuates. The church is very much, biggest problems are spiritual problems, and that's it. Not even thinking, not even considering that spiritual includes mental, and it's all connected. So that I think gets in the way. I think also churches and this may be unfair, but I think what churches often do is we get caught in the business of being a church. Okay, good. I got some amens. Some amens on that. We get caught in that, and we forget what our main function is supposed to be. We're trying to survive now. We're trying to raise money to keep the building open. When COVID hit, we were all worried about that. But so Can We Talk became not a way to replace the church, but a reminder to the church that this is our job. This is what we want to do. So that's what I think gets in the way, the church work, and we forget about what the real work is. I always say when I was, I don't go to the Can We Talks in Roxbury so much. We've started one where I live now in Sarasota, Florida, but I miss the ones in Roxbury because that was my baby. And when we do it, I'd always say, we're not here to church you. And some of the church people get mad at me. What do you mean we're not there to church? But if you think about it, that's different. I mean, I think we're here to be Jesus. And I think that's a little different from being the church sometimes. So that's what I think the difference is. And why is the church uniquely?
What did they uniquely offer?
That's because we do remember vaguely that we are supposed to be Jesus. And Jesus is in us. And read the stories and see what that's about. And it's about love. I've been reading a book that says what's happened with this polarization that we're in right now in this country is that some people are believing in an imperial Christ. This is the king and the ruler, and that's what but they're missing that whole kind of, servant Christ and the love and all of that. So I think churches are uniquely suited when we remember that the greatest commandment is love, and to take care of the least of these, and to show compassion to those who need compassion as God showed to you. And so text after text reinforces what we are supposed to do, and remember, you were a stranger once, so you got to let the strangers in. So all of those, come to us, and this allows us to do that. Taking on a kind of a partnership with a clinical was, to me, a no-brainer that science and religion could work together and be better for that. But that's not how churches tend to think. So I hope and pray that that's the way many of us are going. We've done a lot of replications in our community in Roxbury, so I think it's slowly catching on that we need both.
All right, our first question for you, Reverend Liz, is asking about your creative process. What is your writing process like? And do you have a community, mentor, things like that?
Boy, the writing process. that was very difficult for me. I think I want to do a second book now because I think I learned from the first. Of course, you learn from the first book. Creative process. There's a lot of prayer in my writing, just on which way to go. This book had a lot. It was a big story. And there were times when my editor kept saying, I think we're trying to do too much. You want to, hone this down or get this file down. So there's a lot of prayer in that, in the direction of the story. And early morning is when I write. I moved to Florida to write, and I can say this because people thought I was crazy moving to Florida. I didn't know who Ron DeSantis was when I moved to Florida. I swear I didn't. I didn't even know about the hurricanes, or I wasn't paying attention to the hurricanes. I am paying attention now. But I got a little apartment on the water, on the bay, and that's but I don't think you have to have that, but that's what really helped me with my writing. So, and then, and write, even when you don't want to write. And that was hard for me because I wouldn't want to be in a mood and have to write everything, but you've got to just put it down and then go back and fix it.
Do you have any self-care practices through the writing process?
During the writing process, self-care. I think self-care is what we brought into the program a lot, because when you're dealing with people's pain, you have to take care of yourself. So self-care for me is to go bike riding or try to do something that's totally different from what I do normally. And we do a lot of working with each other. You're going to hear Colleen's name a lot in this because she's our guru in many ways. But Colleen's kind of my counselor, my spiritual counselor, and talking about my needs and that kind of thing and letting it out. So I think self-care is really important. I journal in addition to the writing of the book. And that usually kind of bleeds into the book. And I like to dance. I can't dance, but I like to dance just because I know that movement is good for the stuff that we hold in the body.
All right. Our second question is, has the program ever worked with those experiencing public trauma, such as mass shootings?
Well, we just got a call from a while ago, not just, but from a Baptist church in Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, after the Lewiston shootings. And we're still working with her to start Can We Talk program there. The mass events come up in our conversations when people end up coming. The George Floyd event, that was on everybody's mind. So our program just takes on whatever is going and whatever is happening. It can be the kind of theme of the event, but we've never done any specific mass events. We are not first responders. That's the thing to remember. So, and we've never tried to be. We've thought about it a couple of times, but that doesn't work for us because we want to come in after the first responders have left, and you're still hurting. So the mass events, like the main event, I think our timing will be perfect because people are it's still resonating. It hasn't gone away.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but how frequently do the Can We Talk meetings? Is it monthly?
We started out
talk?
monthly,
Yeah.
but the demand from the community, this was what really, I think, opened our eyes. People wanted it more. And so we started out once a month, and now at Roxbury, we do it every week, either online. We do it because of COVID. We went online and Zoomed. And so now we have 1 week is for Zoom and 1 week is in person. Other cities that are just starting do it once a month, and that's what we talk about. We don't try to impose it anymore and see what happens.
I guess a couple people could speak to this, but how has the program impacted the worship life of Roxbury Pres and maybe other congregations who?
I'll ask you that, Debra. How has it? Because I've left now, but I
coming to the program that joined the church. So that's a win. So I think that's the. But strangely enough, we don't have a lot of the members coming to Can We Talk. We need to figure out how to change that. But yeah, there's people who have joined.
Yeah, I think that
the
members
answer.
don't come because there's that idea that's stuck in our culture. We don't like to tell our own stories in our own house. I think that there's a lack of trust in churches, which is ironic. It shouldn't be, but maybe that's not the right. But anyway, so I think that's part of the reason. At our church in Sarasota, it was such a God thing that I ended up at this church. The woman who is the pastor is also a mental health counselor. And her sermons are more healing sermons now. And one time in the middle of service, she stopped, before she preached, she did a whole thing on forgiveness and then just asked people to start talking about it. And I have never seen that in a formal service. And people responded in amazing ways, telling stories about their own. So it's sort of like she had a Can We Talk at church. So I have seen it affect, service, worship in many, many ways. And where do I worship now? At a Christian Methodist Episcopal church. I'm clearly on some kind of tourist route when it comes to denominations. AME, CME now, which is an offshoot of the AME church. But when we get to heaven, I don't think Jesus is going to say, all the Baptists go over here and the Catholics have that. I don't think it's going to work that way. So I think that's us. I want to tell you a story that, I have two stories. One is Debra's story. I'm going to lead her to tell it. But the first story I wanted to tell you, one of the reasons that I knew Can We Talk was, this was maybe the point when I knew it was really something different. We had a woman, I had seen this woman on the street many times. And you see, if you live in urban areas, but maybe now anywhere. I was in Brookline this morning and I saw a woman and I thought, she's just like my Rose. Rose is not her real name. But this was a woman I'd pass on the street, and she frightened me a little bit in urban situations. People who don't speak, who, are dressed a little less than, not, they just, the image is just something scary and something like they might have a mental illness issue or something, but there's something off about them in your head. And so you avoid them, generally. I remember when I went to New York when my son first went to NYU, and I went to visit him, and I had some change in my hand. He said, Ma, don't give that money out because you'll have to start engaging if you look at them. Ma, don't give them any money. I was like, Nick, I'd raised you better than this. He said, and don't look in their eyes, Ma. I said, Nick, what are you But I think we all kind of have that kind of, I hate to out my son. He's changed since then. But that's what he said, and that's kind of how we feel. So this woman I'd pass all the time. I invited her to church a couple of times, but she never really responded. She was one of the first people who came to Can We Talk. And I had decided in my head that she just came to get food, because why else would she come? She came. She never said a word. She'd sit in the back, and she never said a word. And that went on. But we welcomed her. I don't think we ever bothered her. We just, because Colleen said, so we learned to welcome her and love her in the way we could. She didn't want too much to do with us, but she sat in the back of the room. I write about this. And then one day, maybe a year, more than a year after she had been coming, she gets up and she takes her box, her music thing, AirPod or whatever it was, and she takes it over to the guys who are doing the audio, and she asks them to play a song with her. And it was Don't Worry, Three Little Birds, Bob Marley's Don't Worry song. And it was just as if it was the most divine moment for those of us who knew her, because that was her reaching out. After a year and a half, she played this music, and we were like, oh my God, she's talking to us, And now she's a real involved member of a Can We Talk in Lowell. And she moved. And she comes to, and she talks all the time. And we found out that she had been misdiagnosed. Nobody ever looked at trauma as her issue. People just wrote her off as bipolar or something, but not realizing that she had been just abused in horrible ways all her life, and certainly as a child, and had never had it dealt with appropriately. So that was a real teaching for me, to know you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what they carry. And it's not just the people who are on the extremes. It's all of us. Debra, when I ask you, how do you know you are healing, or how do you define healing, you told me a story that I love you to share, if you don't mind.
Right? Knees hurt. So last month, maybe, or I don't know, could have been last month. I'm losing track of time. Colleen and I and Phil went to a training in New Bedford. Now, while we were there, we did our thing, and then we had to introduce ourselves. So we all did. There was this one woman, when she introduced herself, she said, and she was crying the whole time, that she was here because her son was in jail for life because he killed somebody. So, okay. So then fast forward, we come to the end of the training. She comes up to me. And I'm telling you that even 5 years ago, I couldn't hear that because my son's case is unsolved. So I didn't want to hear about people who committed crimes. So she comes up to me and she says to me, I shouldn't even be talking to you because, of what her son did, my son. And I don't know, I felt like so much compassion for this woman. She was so hurt. And I could tell that from being in this program, you could tell about the beginning of your trauma, like when you're paying for how you feel. It's raw, it's ugly, it's just out there. And so she was talking to me, and I said, "Can I hug you?" Because I was so feeling her pain that I figured out, this isn't her fault. So that was a big leap for me. So I say to myself, something's happening. Yeah.
That gives me so much hope, too, because that means that you can cross all kinds of barriers.
I think we have some more questions.
Yeah, our next question. Can the program be adapted for other faith traditions, or have you thought about whether this model could be translated to other faith traditions?
Oh, I think it can be translated to any faith tradition, absolutely. And I think we're open to doing that. Mm-hmm. We went to, Dana Baker and I went to, I forgot her name the other day, this last November, because I'm just tired, but this last November, Dana and I were invited to go to Palestine. And we took this to a group of Palestinian Christians, but we were wanting to take it to Israel. And they didn't follow through or whatever happened. So we think it's any faith tradition would work. I'm not so what do you think?
Yeah, because the container, the critical elements are not religious.
Yeah, right.
It's about testimony. I mean, the most religious it gets is it's like making good on church practice of giving testimony.
Right.
That's the Can We Talk. But the arts play a ritual component. So I feel like it has a ritual container, but it's not religious. I wouldn't identify it as religious or church specific.
That's what I like to think too. Dana, were you gonna? And we make a big deal of saying anybody is welcome to come into our program. So that's really important for us to say. So I think it could work.
All right, our next question is talking about relationships, saying that trauma can have an impact on our relationships, and how do you continue to cultivate community, and can we talk and have people?
Well, that's the mystic part of this, that we build relationship based on pain. And then all of the people who are a part of the team were some of the first people who came to Can We Talk. So they now have owned the program, and they are the team. So it's not like a formal team. It's just people who want to be a part of it, and those are the relationships. And the way we do it is we always have check-ins. We always talk to each other because you're carrying a lot of stuff, and so we try to keep that going. And continue to build our relationships. We build relationships with the other churches. We have network meetings every other month, and just to talk to other churches, and because it is relational. That's the whole point of it. There's no way you can do it if you don't build on relationships. So that's one of the and please, anybody on the team that has another idea or another thought, jump in. We have a few members of our team here, so that's our key element in the work that we do is maintaining relationship.
I mean, it does strike me that you could be at a I've been to 2 Can We Talk meetings, gatherings, and sometimes there's not that much talking, right? So it's not like mandatory people go up. It's, the music, I think, and the silence that some people, like Rose, she's not talking every week. Absolutely. So it's also a place you can count on the container of the guidelines. I think are super important for saying what's going to happen in this space, so people aren't thrown off. But sometimes there's not a lot of talking.
No, and we say in the guidelines there will be silence. When we started the program, that drove me nuts when there was nobody talking. So we would have our cell phones, and I'd be texting Colleen, "What do we do now? Nobody's talking." But I had to learn. I think we all had to learn that God speaks in silence, and that's even more powerful sometimes than the talk. So we now honor that. As a matter of fact, on the online Can We Talk, we create a space in between testimony so that people can, why don't we just honor what was just said with a few seconds of silence so that you can absorb what's said. And it lifts up what's said even, to another level, I think. So that silence is very much a part of what we're doing. What we're doing in many ways is contemplative practices that have been around for generations. And Barbara Holmes is one of my my heroes, the late Barbara Holmes, talks about the contemplative practice of silence. And I didn't even think about that in African or in slavery, and how that's always been a part of who we are as believers. So we are lifting up the contemplative practices.
It might also be one of the obstructions about how does church get in the way of doing this? Maybe there's too much talking, right? So there isn't that contemplative. There's not a lot of pausing. There's not a lot of.
That's a really good point, Shelly, because what we want to do as Christians, and this is wonderful and it's noble, we want to fix stuff, right? That's what we do, and we preach, and we're going to tell you how to get to heaven. And sometimes, that's not it's not our business, and certainly not within our skill set, really. So the silence, Job said it'd be better if y'all just be quiet and let me struggle with this. Silence is important. So we've learned that, we've practiced that, and seen that in our work. But inevitably, people will want to get up because they are very nervous with the silence. So we have people who say, "I've got to talk just because I can't stand the silence."
What are some efforts, if any, that Roxbury Pres or the Can We Talk has made to address stigma around mental health issues and experiencing trauma?
we have trauma education as part of our program now. And so every once in a while, we will either, Colleen will do some teachings, or in the network we'll invite people to come, or in Roxbury Presbyterian Church, invite speakers to come. I think that's one of the hidden values of this program, is to empower the community with knowledge about what we're going through. That, you know, it's not just that she's an alcoholic because she's a bad person. There's probably something that's triggered all of that. So we're learning about that slowly and surely, and I think that's the value, that we are learning more about trauma, more about mental health. Please, Phil.
Hi, Phil Reason, Director of the Clinical and Community Supports of Roxbury Presbyterian Social Impact Center. One thing I'd like to add that I think contributes to reducing the stigma is because it's a peer-based organization from the community, you see a lot of people from the community in there. So it may be someone you know. So it's often just like, hey, if this person's talking about it and I know what they've been through, it invites people to talk about and share their stories, or just come in and be in space with folks.
I'd like to say something else about Phil. One of my hidden dreams was that this, maybe it wasn't so hidden, was that this program would reach young men because of Cory, because of the need for young men to talk. And early on in the program, maybe the first year, a young man walked in. Do you remember this night? A young man walked in, and he really had the look or the attitude of the streets, and he got up all by himself, and he just talked for maybe 30 seconds. But that was a very promising moment, because young men generally don't come to these kind of programs. We have since started a program specifically for young men, and Phil works with them, and they have 12-week sessions, 12-week sessions a year. Would you like to tell a little bit more about that? I can do it.
Yeah, we have a young men's cohort, 12-week sessions. What I think is really cool about it, because it's regional. It's 5 guys out of Boston, 5 guys out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, young men ranging from 21 to 35. And so what's really cool about it is we do it online. And these are young guys that come together online every week, and each week is about a different subject, and we have, you know, mail messaging, we have several topics, and it really is a space that we try to invite people to come in and talk about what they're going through from their perspective. And I think the first few weeks we're really just establishing rapport. You hear me use this language because I'm also a social work. I came to work here when I was in grad school at BU at the School of Social Work. So when I was here in grad school, I came in to start this program, to be a part of facilitating the trauma group. And so these young men were just incredible. And we went through 12 weeks talking about trauma and what their experience is. And at the end of the 12 weeks, we took a trip down to Bryan Stevenson's Legacy Museum. So, and then they got an opportunity to come together and meet each other. And the bonds that was built virtually was able to really transfer in person at the Legacy Museum. Reverend Liz came and hung out with us one time. We had a really nice time.
And we hope that in the future we'll continue that. We're not going to do it this year, but we hope that in the future we can grow that, because, and it's, you know, people just need to talk. And it seems so simple, but we don't get that opportunity. Where do you go? Where does a young man go to, you know, to talk about that kind of subject? Where do people go? So that's what it is.
We have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to have Shelby read all of them, and you can choose which one you want to respond to. And that person is a lucky winner of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to just read them. We don't have time to answer all of them, but I want them all.
I won't remember the question that started. That's the only issue.
Two at a time, and you can pick one.
2 at a time. That's great.
Okay, I'll choose a longer one first and then a shorter one.
Okay.
First person asks, you talk about your stepmother emerging from the trauma of losing your father, saying she came back softer and it took you a lifetime to see that. I'm wondering if you could say more about the phrase soft spaces for hard places.
You know, the soft, I like that question. And before you even go to the next one, I want to go to that one. When my father died, everybody, well, there were three of us in the house, my brother, my stepmom, and me. And when my father died, I realized, looking back, my father was the center of our worlds. We were not the center of our worlds, and my stepmother was not my friend in my mind, in my teenaged mind. So because she was just so different from me. But I think that his death, I think she went into herself, but I think she had to deal with a lot of her own pain. And I think somehow she became more compassionate with me, though I did not realize it then. She allowed me to go through my craziness. And when I got married, I had stepchildren, and I realized how hard that can be. And so I appreciated her because she didn't fight back, or she didn't confront me with and I did lots of rebellious stuff. I haven't even begun to probe some of the stuff I did. I was wild back in those days. By the grace of God, got through. So I tested her in ways that were just really, you know, some were normal teenage things, but some were more. And she said she had prayed her way through the entire time. And I think that was part of the softness. And she kind of just gave me space. And I think that was a part of the softness that came, that might not have come had my father's death, you know, had that not happened.
She's liking the questions, so let's keep them going.
I'm awful at this because I loved it.
Yeah. So as the program continues to unfold, what new lessons are you learning, or what are you relearning?
Wow. As the program continues to unfold, Colleen, why don't you take that? Because what are the lessons that you're learning?
I think we're learning that everyone needs something like this. It's not that it's rocket science, as you said, but I'm just blown away by people that will travel to come visit us to see the program. People will just call and ask. So I would just say the vision that seems to be, again, we have not, and I promise this, we have not had a strategy of any of this. We wanted God to lead every bit of it. God wanted to shut it down. We would say we served at the pleasure of God. So everything we've done, people have asked for. So the vision now is, given the times we're in, it feels like we could get this in every state, just one. And then the hope is that would become like a hub church, and they could start training and supporting the people in their own state. And we have 6 states already, so it's a good start. And so I think that's been the shock. We never intended it, but I have a feeling we were meant for these times particularly.
Yeah, I think we were meant for these times too. And the thing that I love is that we have some non-negotiables of what this program is, but each church that takes it, they bring a little of themselves to it, and that's what I want. I don't want to, it's not a franchise, so, but it is growing.
How do you make this type of work financially sustainable and recognize the work and the worth of the team and maintaining
what now?
The work and the worth of the team?
Boy, financial stability has been a real issue that we're trying to address. We were blessed with some funders who liked what we are doing. Buy the book. Yeah, that's the answer. Just buy the book. But we got some funders who really liked what we were doing, and we were able to do a lot more than we might have been able otherwise. Another God thing. But this is the question. Now, having a Can We Talk is not a financially strapping thing, because you pay for the food, you pay for the clinician, you meet once a month, so it's doable. And all the churches that we've dealt with, and most of the churches are smaller churches, are doing it. You know, they get involved. What it really needs is the commitment. What it really needs is for us to be what we say we are, which is why I believe that it should stay in the church. So we pay stipends in Roxbury Presbyterian Church. Love offerings, I guess is what we call it. So yeah, that's how we're doing it. But you know, finances are always an issue. But you know, I don't know if I can say this now because I don't know what our governments are like. But back in the day, we would say to the mental health department of the state, we can save you money because of what we're doing. People don't have to come to you. And so, as a matter of fact, we were talking about things like that. So there, you know, there is a logic, a business logic or an economic logic to doing it this way, empowering communities to kind of take care of themselves.
Do we have one more? Oh, awesome.
Do you offer trainings and resources for new chapters of Can We Talk?
Absolutely. I'm going to let you guys take that over here. Colleen, I can bring the mic to her.
So what Liz is saying, too, is when someone wants this, as she said, it's not a franchise. We will give it to you. So there's no cost for anyone to do it, and we will train people. So in that way, that anybody who decides this, and we're really working hard now to have materials that we can really eventually just do this as much exponentially as it's needed. You know, to pass this on, maybe we won't be traveling to train, but we can do it online. And they have a binder. You know, we're working on finishing that. So in that way, that part is the training is there. When I came in 2014, I came with a trauma curriculum of a sort. I was doing my own workshops on trauma education. But what this caused me to want to do and work on since we started this was to develop a curriculum where anyone on the street, Rose particularly, could understand what we were saying. And so that's the kind of education piece that this is and the curriculum that we're going to be teaching at Roxbury Community College. And I want to, you know, part of my new title now is Director of Replication and Trauma Education. So my real passion is to get that out there in other ways.
I will ask a closing question because you mentioned that you want to write a second book. And we want to hear a little bit about what are you thinking will be the first to hear maybe. What didn't you say in this book that you want to say in another book?
I was on somebody's radio show this week, and they introduced this book as a memoir. And it's really not a memoir, though it has parts of my story. But I do want to write my own story. I want to flesh out my parents because I don't want to short shrift anybody, especially my stepmother, and the upbringing that I had because it was good. And I don't think I did it, but I want you to know the whole thing. And the real thing I want to do is I want to imagine my birth mother's life. My birth mother was grew up, and my son got me here because he's doing the research on Ancestry.com or one of those kind of things. And we discovered she was one of 4 sisters. They grew up in Meridian, Mississippi. She grew up in the 30s, black woman in Meridian, Mississippi. Her father was a preacher, and somehow she got to school. And not only did she get to school, she went to college. So that's not normal. That ain't normal in Mississippi today. It's just, so I want to kind of figure out how black women got to that point. And, you know, I'm doing research on it and what was that all about. I found a little clipping through my son. She she participated in some kind of social work symposium or something at Cornell in the 1930s. How does that happen? So I'm going to try to imagine her life, and I'm sure there's some scholarly topic of what that is, historical fantasy. I don't know what it's called, but that's what I want to include in my because I think I want to lift up history. Because they're trying to take away our history. So I think we all have the responsibility to lift up as much of our history as we can.
Well, that's a beautiful way to end. I want to thank you. I want to thank the Cory Johnson folks for being here and continuing in the work. I want to thank this marvelous group of Presbyterian clergy women who made this a destination spot and read the book. So I'm sure folks are hoping that you will sign their books. So you could, just do it here. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Shelly. Thank you all. Thank you.